So welcome everyone to today's webinar. We're talking about the B1 and B2 competencies, preparing for chartership with CIWEM. This is part of a series of webinars that we've run over, I think, this year, looking at different deep dives into different competencies. It's hosted by the CIWEM Urban Drainage Group and the CIWEM Urban Drainage New Members Group. We do have a few general housekeeping issues to cover today, so I'll just move on to the next slide. So for everyone's information, this event will be recorded. I see there's a question in the Q&A about previous recordings. There is a link here to our YouTube channel, which hosts all of the videos of our previous recordings. We do have to wait for speakers to give us permissions and confirm that there are no copyright issues with sharing those. So there can be a bit of a delay getting things loaded up to the site. But yeah, there's definitely a great repository of past content on there. If you're experiencing any technical issues during the webinar, please raise your hand and use the chat feature on Zoom to let us know what the problem is and what help is required, and someone will help you out. If you're having issues accessing the chat, then please use the Q&A. This is going to be quite an informal session. We'll take questions throughout. The Q&A function is the best way to make sure that your question gets answered. So please use that facility. Make sure that you have that available to you and if you've got anyone specific you want to ask the question to, then please make that clear in the question that you're asking. We have 1 hour's CPD attributed to this webinar, but because it's not accredited, we don't provide any CPD certificates at the end of it. So yes, you can log it, but we won't provide any certificates afterwards. Very quickly about CIWEM, it's a Royal Chartered professional body, an independent charity. We provide learning and development, training, policy, publications. We have the Environment magazine, the Water Environment Journal, Journal of Flood Risk Management, really interesting and pertinent topics to water and environmental management. So please check out some of our links. We're based across the world. I'm hoping there's lots of you joining us today from around the world, and it's always really fascinating to see who is interested in our webinars. So thank you all for joining. And it's really great to see the kind of breadth of people that we are now reaching with these webinars. CIWEM Urban Drainage Group hosts this webinar. We are here to promote technical excellence of people engaged in urban drainage management. Started in 1984 as part of WAPUG, but has evolved into urban drainage, the Urban Drainage Group. And we also have our fairly new and wonderful new members group who are there supporting those early career professionals. So if you are an early career professional, I really encourage you to get involved with the group. Reach out to Danny or anyone or via our LinkedIn page. Really great. So now on to the main crux of the webinar. So we're here today to discuss the B1 and B2 competencies. For clarity, the B competencies cover planning, implementation, and evaluation of work. So it is for B1, it's the ability to analyze and evaluate environmental and water problems. And for B2, it's the ability to solve problems by identifying, developing, and evaluating options. This asks for an ability level attainment as part of your chartership. So it is looking for that extra level of detail, doing things in lots of different situations, and testing out or demonstrating how you achieve that and supporting others as well. We've got 4 great speakers today. I'll hand over to Margaret shortly to introduce herself, but we also have Graham, Suhani, and Cam, who are recently-ish chartered people who are here to share their experiences. So it's really a great opportunity for you guys to ask any questions about the B1 and B2 competencies, what you would want to know from people who have recently experienced it themselves. So it's, yeah, a really great opportunity. Please use the Q&A throughout. If we don't have any questions, this session will be over quite quickly. So please make sure that you use that Q&A function. But I will hand over to Margaret, who is one of our seasoned reviewers.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate the position of calling me seasoned. Um, Always good, right? So I think for me, this is about appreciating the position of what should you put in the actual written documentation and what maybe should you highlight when you're actually in your presentation. So as Laura mentioned, I support CIWEM with doing the assessors and the reviewing in between work world. And it's really interesting. So what I'm going to just talk quickly about is maybe some wider position points, I suppose, not specific examples, but wider position points of good looks like in terms of coming and presenting to these different sort of situations. For me, when you first need to think about it as the B1 in terms of the ability to analyze and evaluate environmental water problems, you need to start with the why. Why are you looking at this problem? Why is it important? So if I was to use an example of why am I reducing storm overflow spills, for instance, for a water company, the answer can't stop at, well, because the water company wants me to. It needs to go further and it needs to go, well, because there is some legislation that is driving this requirement, and that's why it's now. And why is it this site? Well, this site is maybe a high priority site based because of DEFRA, and that's why I'm important. That's why I'm working on this point. And why is it this number? Well, maybe it's this number that I'm getting down to because it's in a bathing water area, or maybe just because it's in a normal river course. So it's the position of why. Why am I interested in the site, and what does good look like? What am I trying to drive to? I think is really important to start with in terms of your B1 and your B2 element in terms of those positions. Once you sort of put that position in place to say the why, you can then happily talk about the problem in terms of what are you trying to assess, what data have you brought together, what are the outcomes, and what has it shown you, and therefore what is that driven. And that's a really sort of good way of putting it forward for the ability to evaluate and analyze the sort of environmental water problems. And it should therefore quite naturally lean and work its way forward. I think some people struggle and question when they're working on a big project, because if you're working on a big project and you're just doing a small part, it's the question of, well, should I be talking about the big project or should I be talking about what I'm doing? And the answer really is you can scene set about the wider project, but we really want to know what you did. And it's okay to talk about this element you did and to talk about that point. And that's fine. Some people are working in big multidisciplinary teams and you will talk about your element, but you need to own your element and know how it links some of the other areas. Or you might have those projects where you're the sole person looking at it, and therefore it's a little bit easier in those functions. But both situations are absolutely fine. For the B2s, in terms of solving problems by identifying, developing, and evaluating the options, I think, again, it's really important to start by saying, well, what am I trying to solve? Seems like a simple thing to say, but you've been in the detail, the people you're discussing it to, the people you're writing the document to, they've not. So take the time to say, well, what am I trying to do? What is the problem? What is causing the problem? And how have I solved it? And again, it could be some very small specific elements in terms of there was a problem at this one site. It could be, well, I had a full catchment review to do, and therefore I was looking at a lot of variety of different things. It could be a wide mixture, and it could be at the initial stages of a project. So when it's at that initial concept position, or it could be when it gets further down the line and you're at the point of it's being constructed. And again, it doesn't matter if you're not at that final point. You just talk about the element and the stage you're at, and that's absolutely fine. You don't need to say, and it's got built. If it is a project or a problem that you did the first stage of, and then you've not been involved in the follow-on stages, it is good to sort of just double check, where it's got to, because it's a common thing to be asked. That's nice, that's great. has it got built, even if you weren't involved, then at least you can go, I know it's got this far, which again just rounds off the answer, doesn't it? And I think that's in the general for these two, that's all I really wanted to talk about. I do want to just remind everyone that on the website, in the CIWEM EDG part of the website, we do have our competencies document, which goes through all of these competencies. And you can see some examples and some talk in terms of what's expected, what could be good, that sort of element of information. So if you're coming from an urban drainage background, you can look at that and it gives you time to reflect, read it, think about it, discuss with your mentor, and just see what you have, if it fits any of those sort of examples. If it doesn't, that's fine. Still discuss it through. Might be fine. And then, it hopefully give you a bit of extra information as you move forward as well. So yeah, Laura, I don't know if we want to jump off
Yeah.
to one of the people who've been through it recently.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've asked all of them to give a little intro to themselves. So a little bit of their background, how many years experience they've got, when you got chartered, and a little icebreaker about what's the one thing. Well, name one thing about the chartership process that surprised you. So I'm going to come to Graham first. If you want to give us a little intro, please.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Hi. Yeah, so thank you very much for having me today, I should say. So my name's Graham Campbell. I currently work at Binnies in the Solutions by Nature team as an associate director for SUDS and rainwater management. So I've got about 18 years experience in the industry, which probably puts me in the seasoned category that we talked about before, I think. So for the first half of my career, I worked directly for the London Borough of Enfield. And a couple of years into that role, like 2 years into the role, coincided with the passing of the 2010 Floods and Water Management Act. And that established new responsibilities on local authorities as lead local flood authorities, or LLFAs, as they're known more commonly. So therefore, I became quite heavily involved in establishing new duties and responsibilities for the local authority. And that included things like investigating flooding and drainage issues, and working with stakeholders to develop solutions. So that's quite relevant to the competencies we're looking at today. And then also had input into development of policy documents, such as a local flood risk management strategy, strategic flood risk assessments, which helps guide development in the wider area, and surface water management plans and action plans around that as well, to sort of guide the direction of projects that we developed to deal with flooding and associated problems. And then beyond that, I became involved in the delivery of projects at a range of scales, and that included sort of getting involved in highway level SUDs, such as rain gardens, standalone rain gardens, and as part of wider infrastructure projects, to the development, design and delivery of constructed wetlands and surface water sewer diversions, including daylighting of cognitive watercourses in parks and open spaces. That was sort of the mid-level project. And then also natural flood management projects at larger scales in more rural areas that included woodland creation, river restoration, and beavery introduction. And then more recently, for the last 4 years, I've been part of a small team at Binnies focusing on the design and delivery of nature-based solutions, primarily for water companies, but also other clients. And that ranges from looking at river restoration projects, SUDS, and NFM. So my main role in this role is to be sort of the technical coordination for multiple disciplines on projects, ensuring projects are designed according to specifications and safety compliance, etc. So yeah, that's a brief background. I got chartered relatively late in my career, around 14 years into my career in 2022. This coincided with my move into consultancy, and there were basically a few more incentives around it at that point in time. Plus, as a change of role, kind of fork in the road, I had a bit more time to work on my competencies and getting all my paperwork together. And the thing that surprised me about Chartership, I think, was having the opportunity to look back at some of the achievements that I'd sort of garnered, looking at these from afar and realizing the work and effort that goes into those. I think when you're stuck in the middle of a particular problem or a particular issue, you don't necessarily see it for what it is. And I think having that opportunity to look back and kind of bring all those experiences together was a really valuable exercise. And I sort of reflection I always make since then is that it's always good when you're in the moment on these things, maybe just to jot down a few notes of something you've learned and experienced when you're going through it. Because that's not what I did. I was at a point of putting it all together from hindsight. So that's usually my overarching advice. So yeah, that's me. Thanks.
Lovely. Thank you, Graham. Yeah, the advice of do stuff as you're going along is so amazing. It's one I wish I had done better myself. Lovely. We've got some questions coming in the Q&A, but please keep them coming. If you've got anything you want to ask any of our speakers, please do that. I will pass over to Suhani next. Do you want to go introduce yourself?
Thanks, Laura, for having me here. So myself, Suhani Choudhary, and I'm working as senior flood risk consultant at AECOM, and I have 8 years of experience working in water and environment domain. So my area of expertise are hydrological assessment and hydraulic modeling, and focusing on assessing the fluvial, pluvial, and coastal flood risk. So I work as technical lead for planning applications from small scale to big scale schemes and flood studies, and I also do project management, and I got chartered in November 2025, so very recently. And in terms of the surprising fact about chartership, which I realized was, before I started the chartership application, in my head, I thought it's going to be like assessing how good you are at your technical stuff. But then over the time, I realized that it focuses more on how you think rather than how much you know, and it kind of helps you to connect those dots. So for example, from the your area of expertise or the particular problem you're trying to solve, then you kind of start thinking about what are the regulations and legislation which are driving the particular solution or approach you're taking, and then you start thinking about stakeholders, clients, and try to include everyone's interest, and that's how it help you to build that bigger picture in your mind. Think, yeah, that's it from my end for now.
Great. I like that. I like that bigger picture. Let's think about all the other things that we can do when we're thinking a bit more out of the box. It's really great. Thank you, Suhani. And then Cam, finally.
Thank you. I think the difficulty with going last is everything that you thought of that is great to share. It's already been shared by Graham and Suhani, so I'll try my best. So my name is Puvanakumar. I work for Binnies as well, along with Graham. And I have been in the industry for the last 13 years. And I'm currently working as a principal network modeler, as well as a project manager. I also support with the new member group, as well as I go with Margaret at Imperial College, and we do some short courses as well. So that's my kind of current day-to-day role. In the past, I have undertaken BIM implementation, along with, in terms of modeling, I've also done clean water modeling as well, and also supporting water companies with their business plans as well. For me, that kind of gave me the overall understanding of, what a consultant does or what we do as an individual project and what it means for a bigger picture. I think that's heavily emphasized by Suhani. So that's really, really crucial for my chartership application. In terms of reflective piece, I had two, and both of them be covered by Graham and Suhani, as I mentioned. But the key one that I kind of surprised me was just committing, like, let's say 15 minutes every other day of writing something. And, in a month, you would be spending probably 4 or 5 hours. The hardest bit is just putting something in on the paper. It could be bullet points, just get something in, and then you can make it as a sentence, and then you can refine it, and then things will flow. Just getting started was the hardest thing that I found. In terms of the overall reflective piece, that's really crucial. As engineers, as modelers, and professionals, we just don't want to boast about our achievements. By being able to have that reflection, like, I have done all this, is really critical for building that confidence and being able to go for that chartership. And don't be bounded by when other people got chartered. Some people may have had the right amount of experience and they might have had the confidence to go for it at that stage. But you yourself need to have that confidence as well as being able to commit, and your personal circumstances should suit in order to go for it. Just overcommitting yourself while you have to deliver your professional, day-to-day work could be really, really overwhelming. So time it right. I think for me, that was really critical. In my case, I got really lucky. I was able to get chartered not recently, 7 years ago, in 2019. That was really, really good. But I did go for my CEng later, 2 years ago. By being able to divide that was really critical for me to have that confidence when I'm going for it. I knew I was absolutely sure that I am ready for it. But don't be put off as well. Don't leave it till late. That's another thing. So quite a lot of reflection there. Hopefully it helps for few people. Thank you.
Thanks, Cam. Yeah, I did the opposite of what you just suggested and used healthy competition to force me into sitting my chartership review because I didn't like that someone else got chartered before me. But there are different ways of approaching it, and you've got to work out what works for you and also do it for the right reasons. Lovely. Thank you, everyone. So we've got 4 questions at the moment. I'll go through those, but if you think of any more questions as you're going through, please feel free to add them in the Q&A. So I'll go to Margaret first. What common mistakes do you see in people answering the B1 and B2 competencies, and what is the best way to overcome these?
So I think some people look at them too black and white, as in the point of evaluating and identifying solutions or anything like that. They automatically think it has to be something that's going to get built. And actually, that's not really what it says. You can evaluate and assess options in a way that which isn't actually linked to building something. It can be putting new processes and procedures in place. So it can be linked to something wider. So if you're someone who's sitting further back from actually the building position and you're more in the implementing elements so that things can happen by other people, that you can still talk about your bit. So if you're the person who's deciding and working through the best way to look at building a benefit assessment that's then used by a whole company, so a whole water company or even the whole industry, that's absolutely fine, because you're then being able to look at it at that point saying, well, what are the right benefits to be in there? What are the ones that shouldn't? What's the right robust information? How do you pull that together and create something? So I think some people get hung over the fact that it has to be something you build, whereas it doesn't need to be. I think the other one is the one that I highlighted at the start, which is people not going far enough back in terms of the whys. I've had people say, when I've asked the question of, well, why are you designing to that rainfall return period? They've gone, well, that's because of what the specification says. And that's not going far enough through the whys. There'll be a reason why that specification's been put in place, and you need to go the next step behind that, which is, well, it's because there's a certain piece of legislation or documentation that exists. So I think it's if you are someone who's more on that position of working through an actual solution for an actual catchment, you do need to move it all the way back up to that position of why. Otherwise, you're not. How do you show that you're driving the right solution and the right assessments? I think that's where I'd see that people have struggled on the B1 and B2.
Thank you. That's really helpful reflection. I was going to almost give you opportunity to answer Michael's question, but he's just said that you've partly answered it already, which is great. But yes, I think for the policy side of things, you're very much at the front of the why, but it doesn't necessarily you're still doing elements of the what. You're still designing briefs. You're still putting forward what actually then needs to happen on the ground. It doesn't necessarily have to be a project that you build.
And I think I'd then go the other way down, which is, well, if you're doing that policy direction sort of element, I would hope that you would take up the opportunities to getting out on site and talking and seeing how things are implemented.
Yeah.
So that then you can pull that back to the policy position. So it does go in the both directions. I can see Graham's got his hand up.
Yeah, Graham, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point about the. It's a point that Margaret raised in the intro as well, was around understanding the why of a project, and obviously if you're working on a larger project as a sort of singular discipline, I have experienced instances where those disciplines don't really know what the ultimate end result is meant to be, what they're doing it for, and that actually can sometimes cause a bit of friction on the project. Cam knows the one I'm talking about. We worked on it together, and he shared that experience with me. So I'm not going into the detail of it, but I think it's always important to look up and think about what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. So yeah, that's just a general bit of advice, I think, across all things. But yeah, particularly relevant when you're probably crafting these answers.
Nice, thank you. Cam, you've got your hand up. Oh, everyone's got their hand up. Cam first.
I'm not going to share the project, but I think as early career professional, it's going to be extremely difficult because you're trying to understand the tasks as well as learning a new software, a new tool. And then to have the confidence to raise the question is going to be the last thing that you want to think about. But Margaret is absolutely right. We have covered the A competencies, few months ago. Understand what are the key legislative drivers, understand what are the regulatory requirements is a critical part of demonstrating chartership. So being able to have that background understanding and then raise the question, right, how does this fit with the task that I'm currently undertaking, and seeing the bigger picture, then you can have that confidence, raise the question, because then you can easily understand the response and raise further questions. And that builds your confidence as well. And that helps with your overall chartership process as well, as I believe.
Yeah, that's answered a little bit of Holly's question as well. But thank you. Right, Suhani, you want to come in?
Yeah, I'll first lower my hand. Okay, so I think as Margaret and Cam has rightly said, and I would like to speak from a modeler's point of view. So before I started, looking at the B1, B group competencies, especially B1, B2, I was thinking, well, I'm a modeler and I don't have a design experience. And it seems like, as rightly Margaret said, that, it has to be on build stage, or the design people who are working on the design, they can answer this one. But then my mentors, they helped me to understand the question. I'm really grateful to them. So it's like, even if you're working as a modeler and there are design options, but you would be assessing the hydraulic feasibility of those options, so your outputs will be actually informing the screening criteria, so like from long listing to the short listing. And so that was one thing. And the other thing was, for these two competencies, the main mistake people make might be not clearly listing your identification of the options, and then analyzing and evaluating the options. So when I wrote my first draft, I remember I was not clear enough, so I did not include this word. So like I identified this thing, I evaluated this option, and then I think the main comment which I got was like, you need to be very specific, and it really helps the assessor as well, so that the person has actually given enough justification to the questions asked in the competency.
Yeah, that's really helpful advice, and something that everyone falls into the trap of doing. We always think of us as a team and we're all working together to different goals and stuff. And we specifically have to demonstrate what I as a person am delivering for Chartership. It's a very personal reflection. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. I'm going to kind of merge two. Lily is doing a fantastic job moderating in the background, and just wanted to say I'm really sorry, Lily. I do this a lot where I just merge questions. But yes, thank you to Lily for helping us out. So the next one is, yeah, could you talk us through some of the examples you might have used in your applications? Don't necessarily have to name specific projects, but how you thought about taking a certain type of project to address the competency specifically. Does anyone want to go first? Cam, you were first on the buzzer.
I waited for everyone else to raise their hand, and then I thought, okay, I just don't want it to be no one's raising it. But as Suhani said, it's modeling. Looking at modeling examples is going to be very difficult, especially when you're talking about evaluating options, because it's not going to be built, or you won't know until things goes wrong. That's when you hear back from a team saying, well, it hasn't worked. So that's always difficult, and you don't want to come across as, well, I've just done the stuff my senior modelers have asked me to test. That's not going to be great as well. So you want to highlight a project that where you have identified a way to sort out a problem, what other kind of assessment that you have undertaken. So B1, I feel like, is the bread and butter of what we all do. So we tend to have a problem. Let's say in my case, I've used my clean water modeling to initiate and give the initial kind of overview of what I do and how I do the assessments. So leakage management is key element of quite a lot of clean water modeling projects. So you start with an initial kind of mass balance exercise to undertake understand where the key leakage related issues are likely to be, and then use the existing information like as-built drawings and operation manual information, speak to the operations. That's where the stakeholder management piece comes in. So you understand where the key issues, key known issues are going to be. And then based on that, you identify, I have identified key areas where I needed to do further kind of logger deployment to understand where they drop in pressure, and those data can be utilized in order to calibrate the model. And then the output was aligning with the price control deliverables, like leakage management plus pressure related issues goes along with the supply interruption kind of issues for the water companies. And that's exactly what we do in wastewater, but probably a different kind of software, but we do exactly fit for use or fit for purpose kind of assessment with the model, and identify key areas where you need to do additional surveys of, and then link it with the strategic kind of objective of the stakeholders, and speaking to the clients, speaking to the other design partners to understand where and how you should go about doing your designs. That's where B2 kind of moves in. So doing your root cause assessment and understanding the problems by speaking to the stakeholders and bringing the stakeholders to the journey of getting into the optioneering environment. I can't go into the details of exact specific kind of options that I've used or specific kind of project that I have used, but that's the kind of idea that I've taken to present my kind of justification.
Yeah, thank you, Cam. Suhani?
Yeah, I think Cam has covered most of it, but I can talk about the examples I gave. So B1, I think I found it pretty straightforward. So you define what was the problem, and then I think the question is you to talk about what investigation you undertook and then solution. So for example, I'm a hydraulic modeler, and there was scheme, and my task was to assess the standard of protection for it. And so the investigation then was to undertake a survey. I did not take survey. I did not went out for the survey. However, I reviewed the survey and made sure it's it has enough information for me to build the model. And then I did the hydraulic modeling, hydrological things, and then reached to a solution and came with a conclusion. Well, this is the new standard of protection. So B1 was straightforward. Coming to the B2, I think it gets bit difficult. So as a hydraulic modeler, I was working on a bridge replacement scheme that time. And so the options for the bridge replacement, the design options, they were kind of I would say identified by the highway team, but my task was to assess the hydraulic feasibility and then inform the decision whether we would like to go ahead with this option or not. So I incorporated those design option in my hydraulic model, and the outputs were then used to do the screening. And that also comes, and in that time as a hydraulic modeler, I was also considering, well, the model or the option that I am doing, is it sustainable? Is it like building a wall, or is it like, daylighting a culvert? So those kind of things you then consider. You consider stakeholders, like if I'm building option, is it taking like some private land, who all will be the stakeholders, what will be their interest? So that way you consider every fact and then you reach to a preferred option. So I was able to explain that way.
Nice. That's a really good example to show you don't necessarily have to be involved in every little step to at least demonstrate some of that ability. I'm going to move on to another question now. So at what level of responsibility or project involvement would you expect candidates to be operating to convincingly meet the B1, B2 requirements? And then I'm going to merge it with the what opportunity, if you're not getting those opportunities or levels of responsibility, how do you look to gain that experience in option development specifically, but more generally to meet all those B competencies?
Do you want me to
I would
chime
love
in?
I was gonna go to you first, Margaret. Yes.
Yeah. So what level? This is where the I really comes into it. So you should know, you should have done the process basically that you're explaining. You should have done it, or someone in your team. So this is the point of, what level of are you sitting at? So yeah, it could be someone in your team or it could be yourself that's undertaken it and gone through the process. Now, you can obviously have a technical expert support you on that, but the idea really you should be at the point where they are a sounding board and you know how to go through the process rather than that they are teaching you how to go through it. So I think I saw in the comments when I was just having a little look, someone was asking, well, I'm being told what to do. And if you're at that stage, then you're not really ready to go for chartership. You need to get to the next position where you're preempting what your senior person is asking you to do in terms of going, right, I know what the next steps are. It's this. And it's that project, that level, when you get to that point, that's the projects you want to be able to talk about, because they're the ones which you were involved in, the detail, and therefore you can comfortably discuss it. Now, if you've gone past that point and you're now a manager and you're looking after a team doing them, again, that doesn't stop you. You can talk about one of those projects, but you need to say, well, I initiated the process, I initiated this, I looked after. So you'd be doing that sort of level of things as well. And I've seen a variety of different levels. I saw someone very, very high up, and one of the regulatory people actually come for theirs, and it was quite interesting where their eye was compared to then, someone who's again looking at one catchment and trying to resolve the one problem. But it is that point of eye, and you'll find that the people in the interview and the people reviewing it are trying their best to really sort of balance that position of going, well, you're at that point of your experience. Are you at the line? Are you over the line? And how are you showing that position? The next bit was how do you get that level of experience, wasn't it, Laura? And I think, again, I've slightly already answered it in the fact of, if you're in that position of you have those style of projects, you should be preempting whoever's instructing you and teaching you. So hopefully you're at a point of going, I've come in, I've written it down, I know what I'm doing. You okay if I just crack on? And if you can get to that point, then you're happy, aren't you? If you're struggling to do that just because of the type of projects you're on, that's a great position to talk about with your line manager, with your sponsor, to see what can be found to get you the right projects to then allow you to then move forward. Now, they're not magically going to arrive in the next day, but at least they can hopefully tell you going, right, well, we've lined you up for one in a couple of months, and then that should hopefully help for you. But if you don't talk to people and let them know why you need it, what you're looking for, then obviously that's not going to help the situation. So, I'd hope you're all in a position where you can have those conversations.
Yeah. As a personal reflection, I used it as a bargaining chip to open up some of those conversations. If I could say, this is where I'm not meeting my competencies, these are my gaps, then that's a really powerful conversation. And most of your line managers do want you to get chartered. So it is definitely a way to have a nice structured conversation around things. So yeah, I would really recommend, even if it's not fully fleshed out competencies, bullet points of specific examples as you're going through, really useful.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the bullet points because
Bullet points are fab.
you don't know, do you, if you're going to use that example in your final one. So use your
Yeah.
effort where you need to.
Yeah. This isn't about me. Graham.
No, it's cool. I just a thought that has occurred to me. I think through those answers was about preempting the next thing that you need to think about on a particular project or task you're involved in, and sometimes that can stem from just something as simple as asking questions. So it's always about going back to that point of not being afraid to ask questions, be confident to ask questions, because that is you effectively taking the first step at preempting what the next step might be. Often because the conversation that flows from that might be you preempting that and helping to gain that sort of evidence. Yeah, just thought that was all. That was all.
No, that's useful, very useful. Got a question here about some of non-UK context. I'm trying to work out how to phrase this, but yeah, if there is an example of a project where you're trying to explain the why, but it's not necessarily one that people are that familiar with, or it's not driven by regulatory or environmental standards that we have in the UK, how do we demonstrate the why? I feel like I could answer this question, but would anyone else like to answer it?
I've obviously seen and had a lot of people internationally, present them, and it can be done. I think there is always someone or some body that is governing body that has made a decision that has meant the work is required. So it may not be a UK sort of government. It might be the Singaporean government. I've seen quite a few of those, or the Hong Kong government. There will be some body which is deciding it. Now, sometimes that's not actually a government position, and it is literally someone in a company who's decided they want to aim for something, and then they've got agreement within that company. So Guernsey is a good example of that. Guernsey is not part of the UK in terms of the legislation requirements, but when I was in consultancy world, I supported them quite a lot, and their aim and ambition was to be at the same similar position as the UK bodies. They didn't have to comply with it, didn't need to, but they'd made a decision that they wanted to. So you could say in that position, that's why we were doing things in their area as well. They didn't have to, they aspired and wanted to. And sometimes that's okay. You just need to be able to articulate that in terms of, well, where did this start from? And sometimes it is that position of, well, actually, this company just wanted to be ahead and they wanted to go further. They didn't need to, but they wanted to.
Nice, thank you. I'm just thinking of SpaceX. No one's telling them to go to space, right? They're doing it because they can. Maybe I shouldn't bring that up, but never mind. Um, okay, I'm trying to think if we've got any more questions that I've not necessarily raised. There's one that came in from our new members group that I'm going to go back to, which isn't in the chat. Sorry, guys. About how can early career professionals, particularly when you're at those early stages of your career, build that confidence in questioning data, assumptions, and briefs? Like, is this the right thing to be doing? I think it's a matter of time and experience, but any suggestions, Suhani? You can go.
So on this one, I would say that gaining experience in your area of expertise really helps, and which kind of which happens over the time. However, doing some kind of simple sense test, so as we progress in our career, we realize that at the end of the day we are trying to simplify what we are doing. So doing those kind of simple sense tests then kind of help you to realize or identify what kind of data has gone into the model, what assumptions you have taken, and what are the results, are your results intended fit for the intended purpose. So those kind of things, those kind of structured questions to yourself will help you to identify the gaps or the areas where you can then question if you think things have been missed.
Thank you. Yeah, very good point. Cam, I saw your hand was up and then you took it down again, so I'm going to put you on the spot.
I think I was going to say the same thing as Suhani, as well as tying with everything that we have been discussing today. Understand why we are doing it. That gives you the confidence of what kind of questions and what kind of things to check. That's really crucial. And in terms of building the confidence, I feel it goes in two ways. We need to have managers and senior people who kind of supports that kind of questioning environment. And when someone does some sense checks and come back to you as a senior manager, and then you look at it, and then you need to be encouraging that, and that's the only way we can raise the confidence in the graduates and the early professionals. And from an early professional perspective, just like Margaret was trying to say, you preempt what are the potential pitfalls, and therefore having that preempt, not just there to be a blocker, but to convey and raise the question as well as provide suggestion. Right, I have a question, I have a query over this data, but I have done this sense testing, and this could put our program by a certain amount of months, but I can do these things. So having that preemptive or proactive kind of nature of looking at things is really crucial. And then once you have done it two or three times and you have been encouraged by your senior members and your peers, then it's your day-to-day kind of thing. You would always do it.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. A couple more have come in. They're quite logistical. I think they're quite interesting to discuss in this forum. So the first one is about, should you use set the scene in your B1 competency and then go into B2 with the same example? And then another one about handling projects that have sensitivity around what you can divulge as examples. Did any of you guys in your applications have situations like that, or did you just pick a different example? What if there's one that's very specifically useful to demonstrate a particular competency, how do you get around that? Deathly silence. Thanks all.
So I was hoping someone else would jump in. Oh, do you want to go?
I can try.
I'll let you, Graham. Yeah.
You sure? Yeah.
Graham first, then Suhani,
I don't know. I'm going to make something
Margaret.
up. All I'm going to say is that sorry, someone's calling me. Trying to get rid of that. Is that I didn't use the same examples actually, but I think in B1 I used more of maybe a general approach to the specific example I was able to draw on was sort of investigating flooding issues and what sort of tools and data I would aim to bring together to try and answer and sort out those sort of queries. And then in B2, I did then go on to discuss the sort of options around a particular flooding issue in particular, where I could draw in more of the situation there. So there's a bit of flex. I think you could be more general in B1 and more specific in B2, I guess, is the answer to that.
Yeah, thanks. Suhani, do you want to add anything?
In my case, I use different project examples, but I think we can definitely use same project example. And as Graham rightly said, B1 is more of like identifying problem and then discussing about what you did. And then if you are doing the option appraisal on the same project, you can talk about it.
Yeah, I think they are looking for breadth of experience. So I think I've said on one of these other calls that maybe looking at it and selecting 3 or so projects as your core ones to talk about throughout are helpful, because it means that the person reading it isn't having to suddenly remember 50 projects, which is a bit of a mind blower, to be honest. But at the same time, they are expected to see a bit of breadth. So in your B1, you shouldn't just talk about one example. You should talk about two, three, maybe, or lean on the fact of this is a good example, but you can see others in my CV, and the same with B2. It does help sometimes if they're the same project, but you don't have to do that, no. And you can definitely do with that little bit of blend of I've done this approach in a variety of different examples, definitely. A bit of specificity helps a little bit, but as has been already talked about, for a CIWEM chartership, excluding the extra positions of scientist or CEng, etc., it's not a technical interview. It is about your approach. So that's just something to think about in terms of the level of detail you really want to go into there. It's about the approach, really.
And just Margaret, on the sensitivity point, I'm guessing there's kind of rules around what can and can't be shared
Yeah,
beyond the interview space. So
yeah,
it,
it's a very sensitive, safe position, in terms of that point. But I do appreciate that if you've been working on something that is going through court, which some things do, they're probably not the best examples to talk about, because of that position that there is a court proceeding still happening. That's where you may just want to go a little bit generic for your position and for the company that you've done the work for. But barring that, it's a very, very safe environment for you to talk through examples, in that sort of environment.
but you can be quite generic in what examples you are using as about demonstrating your experience, not necessarily the ins and outs of a particular project.
Yeah, no, you're not there to talk about the technical elements, it's about the process. Um, but yeah, if you feel uncomfortable and you think you're getting into the world of, wait, hang on, that specific project is going through a court, then you can just talk to say, I'm really sorry, that one I can't talk about because of that, but I can talk about this one. And they'll shift and they'll talk about that one. That's fine.
Great, thank you very much. Right, I think that's us at time, which is really sad. I thank you everyone, for our panelists in particular, for your great insights as we've been going through today. Thank you everyone for your questions as well. I'm just going to share my slide again for one final wrap up. Hopefully this will work. So just for everyone's information, we've got a couple of events coming up. We've got the second round of the B competencies on the 30th of June. So that's for going into depth on B3 and B4. So if you've got questions about those, please bring them along. Please sign up. The new members group are hosting their second technically, study weekend in Sheffield in person on the 1st to 2nd of August. So there's a great opportunity to network with other people in other outside of your main work environment, but also do some deep dives on some chartership related stuff, and also just sharing knowledge across early career professionals. Got a call for papers open. We've got two call for papers open for the Wales National Flood Conference and for the Urban Drainage Group Annual Conference. And then we've got a whole host of upcoming events. So lots going on in the CIWEM world. If these are of any interest to you, please go onto the website, go onto the events page and sign up. Thank you everyone again for your time, and I'll give you all 4 minutes back. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.